To kick off the Boxing Truth Radio on this edition, we have a trainer out of the Oxnard area, the one and only Robert Garcia. How's it going, Robert?
I'm doing good. How about you guys?
We're doing good, man. You're on here live with all our listeners. I'm sure they might possibly call in and hit you up with a few questions. If you want to touch us up on the phone lines, the number is 562-219-3603. This weekend, Robert, I know one of your fighters, Brian Viloria, will return to action. He'll be getting back in the ring after taking that really strong victory from Archie Solis out in the Philippines. I believe this Saturday night in Hawaii, Brian Viloria will be facing, excuse me, I don't have the name of his opponent in front of us, so maybe you can inform us a little bit more about that fight.
Yeah, we'll be leaving to Hawaii tomorrow morning. He's got to fight this Saturday against Jesus Iribe from Mexico. He's contender in the top 10 in the IBF. So we've seen videos. He's a difficult opponent, a little bit tall, and he packs pretty much a lot of power. So we're in there, for a real fight. After Brian won his title, I know that he looked very impressive, and everybody thought, he's back at where everybody wanted to see him. So they brought in a pretty difficult opponent. Hopefully everything goes well, and we're looking at bigger fights down the line, maybe before the end of the year.
I know that going into that fight with Ulises Solis, a lot of people might have favored the Mexican against Brian Viloria. When Brian Viloria came to you, from his own admission, Brian Viloria said he had a few losses. He was kind of starting from scratch when he went to Oxnard. He went to La Colonia. What's it been like working with Brian over the last year and a half, and trying to get his career back on track?
The work we did with him was mostly mentally. We had to get his confidence back in the ring. We brought him into the gym, with kids, with all the professionals that train with us. He started getting into a different atmosphere. I know he was used to training at Freddie Roach's gym, and then he tried some other places where it didn't work out. With me, he came to the gym. I introduced him to everybody. He became really good friends with everybody, and mentally, we started working with him, about him, being one of the best junior fighters. I think it was just in his mind. He thought he was already he had already accomplished so much where he didn't have to do anything else. But we started getting into his mind where, come on, you could still be one of the top junior flyweights in the world. And to me, he, like I tell him all the time, look, Brian, now that you won the title, our next goal is to see you in the top 10 pound for pound fighters in the world. I know it's very difficult, but I know he's got the skills to be up there, and all I need to do is just keep pushing him, keep telling him, prepare him mentally to be there, and he's got the skills to do it. I know it's difficult because of his weight division. A lot of boxing experts and critics don't really recognize that that weight division that well, but skills-wise, I think he's one of the best fighters. He's got so many skills in training. He hardly ever gets hit. He showed it against the fight against Archie Solis. He dominated the fight and then knocked him out in the 11th round. It just showed the type of fighter he is, and he was going in against a true champion. In Archie Solis. His 9th title defense, already looking past Brian. Because he was already talking about his fight against Calderon. So they were already looking past Brian, and I know a lot of people involved in boxing didn't give Brian a chance in that fight. But we knew that Brian was good enough to beat him. It was just keep reminding him every break, every minute break. I was reminding him, you're better. Keep doing what you're doing. Fight smart. You just got to keep reminding him, and he did. He listened and overcame everything.
Now let me ask you this: we got one of the individuals in our chat room, Mr. Payne, saying that an Edgar Sosa rematch would be nice. Is that a fight you think that would be good for Brian right now? I know you probably don't make the decisions in terms of matchmaking, but do you think a rematch with Edgar Sosa would be in order?
Well, you know what? Actually, that's the fight that Brian wants so bad, and that's the fight I would love, because I actually seen that fight. I was still not working with Brian in that fight, but I had one of my fighters on the same card in when they fought. So I seen that fight, and I know just by seeing Brian, the way he fight, it wasn't the Brian that I have right now. Brian right now is unstoppable. He wants Sosa so bad that that's what I would also love to do, that to get that WBC back in his belt, in his waist, because I feel he's much better than Sosa. But if that don't work out, if they work something out, I know Bob Arum's already talking about Calderon. So and any of those unification fights will be big for Brian. I know that if you ask him personally, he's gonna he'll tell you he wants Sosa as his first choice, and I would jump on that too, because I know he's Brian is better than Sosa, and Brian could beat Sosa.
This is the Boxing Truth Radio. We're on here with Robert Garcia, trainer from the Oxnard, California area. We've been talking a little bit about Brian Viloria. Let's look back to last weekend, Robert. One of your fighters, Steve Luevano, was in a controversial bout with Bernabe Concepcion, fight which was called off because Concepcion hit your fighter Luevano well after the ringing of the bell, marking the end of the round. What are your thoughts on that whole situation, that fight? What are your thoughts?
Well, you know what? Honestly, to me, to call it controversial win, I don't want to call it a controversial win, because if we look at a controversial win or a controversial fight, maybe last night, with Malik Nagy and Diaz, that's controversial. I think with Steven, he was winning the fight. He was ahead on the scorecard, and it was just something that he didn't expect. Nobody expected when Concepcion just hit him. It was clearly after the bell. We see the fight over and over, and the bell rang. Clearly, Luevano dropped his hands. Walking, took a little step toward Concepcion to shake his hand, as a good round sign, and that's when he got when he got caught. I think we were on our way to a victory against Concepcion. The controversy is, okay, what was going to happen the next 5 rounds? Freddie Roy just had a plan. That's always going to be the question until we do the rematch, and if the rematch happens like they're saying by December, I think